YouTube, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the tag that Sean the Book Maniac created. It originally was called Pull 10 Books Off Your Shelves and Talk About Them. Over the course of several months, this tag has gone through several name changes, but the essence is take 10 books that you own or 10 books that you have around in some way and just talk about them. Some of these are books that I have read, some of them are books that I have on my TBR, and one of these is a book that I'm currently reading. But I'm going to tell you a little something about them. I'm going to start with On Love by Alain de Botton. I saw this book in the bookstore about 2 years ago, and I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to buy it. So I left without buying the book. I dithered around, looked at it online. Eventually, some weeks or months later, I found this used copy in the used bookstore and I bought it. I started reading it immediately. I got to maybe 50 pages in and I stopped. And it's a short book. It's only about 230 pages. It's written in kind of bullet point, kind of essay format, but it is a novel about a man who meets a woman on a flight leaving Paris going to London, and he is smitten by her. He is convinced that she is his true love, but as he starts to get to know her, he's not so sure, and as she starts to return his affection, I guess he loses interest. I don't know. I never got far enough into the book to tell you what the book was about, but I have read such rave reviews for this that I keep meaning to return to it. If you have read On Love by Alain de Botton, or if you have a copy and you'd like to read it with me, I feel like this is a book that I want to read with someone and discuss. I'm intrigued by the size of this book and the cover, and just something about a book that is musing about what love is, how love develops, and the course of love, how it evolves, how the person who feels love or experiences love is changed by the emotions or the physiological effects of love. I don't know. Let me know if you've read this one. We'd love to talk to somebody about it. I don't think I've heard too many people mention this author or this title. He is known for a few other things. In the front of this book, it says he's also written Kiss and Tell, The Consolations of Philosophy, How Proust Can Change Your Life, The Essential Plato, and The Romantic Movement. And yet, this is the book that I have and would love to read more, well, to just read it again from the beginning and this time to the end. So On Love by Alain de Botton, that is my first of my 10 books. Book number 2 is one that I read last year and will be rereading this year. This is a Man Booker previous winner, so this is going to come up in my reading later this year. This is the 2008 winner of the Man Booker Prize, The White Tiger by Aravind Adiga. This one is set in India, and the main character was born in a low caste, and so he's experienced poverty, extreme poverty, because if you know anything about the caste system, it sets the parameters and the boundaries of your life and where you should even dream to go. But this young man is determined that he will dream and reach past those limits. And so he gets a job working for a family, and eventually he takes advantage of all the opportunities that are available to him, those that are allowed and even those that are illegal. In the process, he moves from household servant to driver to entrepreneur to murderer to lots of different things. And he reveals himself to the reader, but also to this person who he's writing a letter to, because he's gotten to the place where he can now have diplomatic relations with people from outside his country. And because you know the extreme poverty that he started his life in, it presents a little bit of a conflict for the reader. Do you really want to fault this man for taking whatever opportunity he could to escape the life, the abject poverty that his life was? There's a lot that I liked about the book. I love a book that gives me complex feelings where I'm not sure how I feel, whether I feel revulsion or admiration for the main character. So I'm looking forward to re-experiencing this book this year. The next book is one that I haven't read yet, but it is on my June TBR, because in June I'm going to be doing the buzzword readathon with Lala from Books and Lala, and her buzzword for June is you. And this book has you in the title in the form of the word your. Give Me Your Hand by Megan Abbott. This, I think, is young adult thriller. I'm looking forward to reading this one. I don't know too much about the synopsis, and I don't want to, just because it is suspense and thriller, and I'm always afraid that the synopsis is going to tell me too much about the story. Like, I don't want to know going in what's going to happen in the book up to page 100. So I try to avoid book synopses for thrillers, especially suspense, thriller, mystery books. I don't want to know almost anything before I read it. Book 4 is Frederick Backman's A Man Called Uva, I think is how this book title is pronounced. I read Frederick Backman's Beer Town last month and I loved it. And now I want to read more of his writings. I also own A Man Called Uva, so I figured it's time to pull this one up off the TBR shelf and put it on my current TBR. So I think I'm adding this to my June TBR. I don't have any room for it in May, but I want to read this as soon as possible, you know, all my other reading obligations permitting. This one is about, I think, a grumpy old man who is misunderstood because the fact that he doesn't want to be social doesn't necessarily mean that he is antisocial. It just probably means that he's in pain, and something reveals his life and the complexities that are his life. Maybe someone befriends him and finds out that he's really in mourning, or he's really dealing with a desperate change. Who knows? I don't know. I don't want to read the synopsis, but I'm going to be reading A Man Called Uva probably next month. Frederick Backman, I really liked Beer Town. It had a lot of sports in it, which is not my favorite thing to read about, but the sports was really just a backdrop for the rest of the story to take place. Even though Beer Town was set in Sweden, in our country and in our society in general, we spend a lot of our focus on sports and entertainment related people. They become celebrities and we want to excuse them for things. And I think that the author did a really good job of incorporating the attention that we give to sports and sports culture, incorporating that with political issues. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of social issue the author is going to deal with in this novel, whether it's some mental health awareness or physical or emotional health awareness, or just ageism or something. I don't know. I want to read it hopefully in June. Book 5 is a book that I should read in May, and if I find a spare moment in May, a spare few hours where I can read something else, I feel like this is a book by an Asian author that I could tackle in May for Asian Readathon. This is Waiting by Ha Jin, and I've owned this book for about a year now. I haven't gotten a chance to get around to it. I don't like reading books about love triangles, but I like reading about complicated relationships. I write about complicated relationships. I love reading them as well. And this one has a complicated relationship that may or may not be a love triangle at its center. It's about a man who is working, I think he's working in the army, and every year he goes home to try to end his marriage because he's been involved in this loveless relationship for a long time, and he's since found love with someone else he wants to marry, but his current wife won't divorce him. And so every year he goes to try to end things with her and she won't let him, and he's decided that he can't wait anymore. And I don't know what he's planning to do or what's going to be revealed about the current relationship that he's in, and what kind of dilemma that puts him in with the relationship that he wants to take to the next level. But I'm interested to read. I don't read a lot of books that are set in China. I read, I think, more books that have Chinese characters, but not necessarily books that are set in China. So I'm looking forward to reading this one. And this won the National Book Award a few years ago. I really feel like I should read it soon. I've seen it pop up on lists. I love a good book list challenge, and I know I should read this this seems like the perfect time to read it if I can. So let's see if I can add this. Book 5, want to push it to my TBR ASAP. Book 6 is one that I read a couple of years ago and raved about. And if you haven't read it yet, consider this my bringing this book back to your attention so you can read it finally. This is a short story collection. The author is Argentinian and the title is Things We Lost in the Fire. The author is Mariana Enriquez, and these short stories, they affected me. They're all centered around female characters who are in some kind of trouble. How they get themselves out or what they do while they're in the situations is really affecting. The title story is the last story in the book, and it's the one that really impacted me the most. It was about women who were being burned as punishment and how they decided that they were going to take this scarification upon themselves and see it as a badge of honor, something to claim and something to celebrate rather than the shame that it was meant to represent. If you don't read anything else from this book, read the title story. I thought it was so profound, so deep, so disturbing, so memorable that I haven't stopped recommending this book ever since I read it. I've since bought copies for people that I thought should read it, and other people have raved about it. So Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez. Some of the stories are strange. They include some magical realism, some just magical elements, some stories that don't seem like they get resolved, even though the characters and their situations continue to resonate with you long after you've tried to move on to another story. Things We Lost in the Fire. Book number 7 is Blindness by Jose Saramago. This author won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So far, this is his only book that I've read. As you can tell, I was really affected when I was reading this book, and I tabbed a lot of it. And this was when I was tabbing books blue for places where I was very sad or wanted to cry. So you could tell how this book impacted me. I read this one about 2 years ago, and I don't know if I'll ever be strong enough to reread it, even though it's such an intensely moving story. It's about a man who's driving one evening. He's in an unnamed city, which is meant to just represent anywhere in the world. In any case, this man is driving and he suddenly loses his vision, and everyone who he encounters, there's a chain of events that's set in motion as they interact with him. They also eventually start going blind, and this epidemic of blindness hits the city and spreads to other surrounding areas until the entire world is blind, with one exception. And what's interesting about this story is that blindness is not dark, it is light. It is so much light that you cannot see. And so blindness is white light as opposed to darkness in this case. And the blindness is meant to represent our refusal to acknowledge or refusal to see, really see what is happening around us. And I thought that this author did such an amazing job of portraying human tendencies and comparing it to physical ailments. I liked the comparison between what a seeing person and an unseeing person would do, how they would behave in the same situation, how their actions would be different. And I absolutely love the reconciliation and the resolution at the end when everyone had to acknowledge what had happened that caused this blindness in the first place and what they were going to do moving forward. This book was a 5-star read for me. I just love the look, the exploration of human tendency, and I loved everything about this book. So this is book number 7. Book number 8 is a book that I've been wanting to read for years. Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Toole. I love the story behind this book, where this man wrote this book and he was so sure that this book was life-changing that when he sent it to the publishers and they rejected him, he couldn't deal with the fact that his important work of art was being rejected, that he committed suicide. And eventually his mother took the manuscript and submitted it, and it won the Pulitzer Prize. So he won the Pulitzer posthumously after killing himself because the book didn't get the acclaim that he wanted it to. I think it's such a sad story, but also so intriguing. And so I haven't read the book yet. It is political and social commentary. I'm putting it on my summer reading list. I don't know when in the summer, but one day this 400-page book is going to go in my bag, and I'm just going to start reading it, and I'll tell you all about it, because I love history, I love satire, I love political commentary when it is masked by very funny Don Quixote type characters, which is what this book is. And I have an ongoing challenge to read Pulitzer Prize winning books and Pulitzer Prize winning authors. So this book checks a lot of my boxes. So A Confederacy of Dunces is book number 8 in my pull 10 books off my shelf and talk about them tag. Book number 9 is Margaret Atwood's Hagseed. I actually have 2 copies of this book because I was trying to collect this edition. The Hogarth Publishers was doing a series where they had popular authors do a retelling of a Shakespeare play. And this one is Margaret Atwood's take on Shakespeare's Tempest, which I read and loved. So I own this copy because I got this as a review copy from the publishers, and then I went out and bought a hardcover copy because I prefer to collect hardcover books, and I also love the hardcover copy, which I should have brought to show you as well. But I really wish I'd heard more people talk about this book and talk about this series here on BookTube. I mean, I thought that this was brilliant. How Margaret Atwood incorporated Shakespeare's original theme and characters into present day, or mostly present day, experience. I thought she did it brilliantly. In this one we have Felix, who's a director. I think he's a director for a Shakespeare play company, and he loses his job at the time when he's been working on this adaptation of Tempest, and eventually he resurfaces working in a prison teaching convicts about Shakespeare, and he has this brilliant idea to have them put on the play and invite the men who stab him in the back to take his job away from him. And I love the way that Margaret Atwood incorporated the revenge, but also really stayed true to what Shakespeare's Tempest was meant to accomplish. If you didn't read this series, Anne Tyler did Vinegar Girl, which was an adaptation of Taming of the Shrew. That was the first of the series that I read and loved. I also read Shylock Is My Name, which was Howard Jacobson's take on Merchant of Venice, which I thought was brilliant. It was the first book that I read in 2017, and I talked about it all year. I haven't loved Howard Jacobson's Booker Prize winning novel, but I really admired his writing in Shylock Is My Name. And Margaret Atwood's Hagseed was the third of the books in that series that I read. I'm not sure if all the books have been released yet, because I think it was a slow rollout, so I'm gonna have to look that up. And book number 10 is a book that I'm reading right now. I'm doing a buddy read of The Story of Edgar Sawtelle by David Roblowski. I'm reading this with Patrice Jones. Hi, Patrice. And we are in the middle of this book, and I gotta tell you, I don't know how this book is going to end, but I have loved the pacing and the setup of the plot so much that now I have an opportunity to just talk about a book, because I'm probably not going to finish until the end of the month, but I have an opportunity to just say how captivating this book is. We meet a boy, and I'm not even sure how old this boy is because he acts like an adult, but he's also written with all these childish tendencies that you are always being reminded that he is a child, even though he's mature beyond his years. He's living on a remote farm in Wisconsin, and his parents are dog breeders. His father's family comes from a line of dog breeders, and as a child, he's curious and he goes through records and he finds things and he asks his parents about history. And so they've given him lots of alternatives, but not always the truth. And so his curiosity has been building and he's trying to work out what history really means, trying to find it within all these possible stories that he's been told. I think that that really captures how we learn history, how we have to take all the different narratives that we get from all these people who have different relationships to what really happened, how they tell us things, and how we're able to, or how we try to decipher what is the real single truth from all these different possibilities. The thing about Edgar Sawtelle is that he's mute. He has a fantastic gift for language, and that is because even though he was born not being able to speak and doesn't have vocal cords, there are all these different explanations for why he isn't able to speak. I think it's such a beautiful rendition of a child who has a disability but it's not disabling, who has a handicap but it's really portrayed in the way that it seems like it's a gift. And I love the alternate versions of reality that are being touted in this book, and the opportunity that the author is giving us to try to uncover the real story ourselves. He gives us these clues about what's happening, and oh, I love the fact that the parents are breeders and that part of their job as they prepare for a new litter is that they isolate characteristics that they want to create in the child and the new pup. And yet their child would seem like a mutation, a fluke, because you know the parents don't have the disability. So this is book number 10. I couldn't resist the opportunity to just say yes again about this book. I got this book as a gift from my friend Tara. Hi Tara. Thank you so much for bringing this book to my attention, because who knows if I'd ever have read this book without you, and I'm loving it. So thank you guys, thank you everyone for watching me talk about 10 books from my shelves, 10 random books that I just pulled because today is Tuesday, it's Tag Tuesday, and I wanted to do a tag, and I decided to just do Sean's original tag, which is pull 10 books off your shelf and talk about them. So thanks for watching this video. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, if you saw me talk about a book that I'm going to be reading sometime soon and you want to buddy read it with me. I'd love to share that experience with you. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let's talk in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.